There's this idea in sociology that nothing is inherently out of place. It just depends where you put it. So what happens when you become something that your environment can no longer hold? I feel like the weirdest person in every single room I walk into, and I can't tell if that's a me problem or a location problem. Coming back to my small hometown from New York City wasn't supposed to feel like this. At least I didn't quite expect it to. God, words are crazy here. I thought it would feel familiar, easy, maybe even comforting. And in some ways it has. I won't say it's been all terrible, right? It kind of feels like I'm existing slightly offbeat of everything. Like everything around me makes complete sense. It's all good. It's all great. The only thing that doesn't make sense is me being inside of this. And I keep thinking about how relative all of this is. Like how the same person can feel completely fine in one place and completely out of place in another. And suddenly the way you dress, the way you think, the way you move through the world, it all just feels exaggerated, I guess, just because of where you are. Like my sadness in New York City is so different from my sadness in upstate New York, and same with my happiness. In New York, being a little off, a little intense, a little different, a little silly, goofy, dare I say. It's very normal there. It's almost expected of you. There's space for it, and more importantly, there are people who reflect that back to you. And sorry, I'm not like looking directly at the camera. The sun is so bright right now, but I need this vitamin D, so just bear with me, I guess. But here in upstate New York, I don't know, it feels like there's this sort of unspoken baseline, and anything outside of it, it doesn't really have anywhere to land, you know? It's all comfort zone. There's not much outside of that. You either choose to actively like stand out in a place like this, or you just shrink and kind of fade into the background like most people. And I've just been trying to figure out like why that is. So in sociology, there's a concept called deviance. You've probably heard this term many times before. It's often, I think, misunderstood as something that's very inherent. Like certain people are just naturally outside the norm, you know, drawn to quote unquote taboo things. But I don't think that's actually how it works. Howard Becker, who wrote The Outsiders in 1963, argued that deviance is not a quality of the person or the act itself, but rather like the result of how others on the outside respond to it. In his words, social groups create deviance by making the rules and then labeling anyone who breaks them as other. We see this in so much media. I mean, it's kind of the core of many things that make us who we are, you know, like what group do we fit into? What subcultures are we into? What kind of music? What kind of fashion? Where do we see ourselves in the world? And does that align with where other people see themselves in the world? So nothing is like inherently deviant, right? Nothing is inherently out of place. Something becomes that way when it exists in a context that does not have the category to sort it, to make it feel where it's meant to be. And I keep coming back to that idea here because I don't feel fundamentally different from who I've always been. I just feel like parts of me have suddenly become way more extreme or more difficult to understand or too much based on the environment that I'm currently in. You guys, it is genuinely so cold right now and it's so windy. And I think there's an owl in that tree. I need to tell Ben there might be an owl in this tree. What's changed is not necessarily who you are, but the environment and what the environment allows you to be. You know, how much the environment allows you to access yourself, I guess. And because of that, like the same traits that often I felt very neutral about myself or liked or disliked, whatever it is, it all feels very amplified in a very different way. Makes me super hyper aware and nitpicky of myself, which I don't love. In spaces like New York, standing out has actually a place to go. You know what I mean? Like differences have somewhere to go. There's subcultures, there's communities, there's people who reflect the parts of you back to yourself that makes your identity feel so legible and so seen. Your individuality is contextualized rather than being like interrogated and scrutinized in a place like this. What was that? God, there's so many birds. In a place with a much narrower range of self-expression, the same individuality just doesn't have the same infrastructure that it does in a place like New York or a big city or somewhere that just accepts you for who you are. It doesn't land the same way, you know? And so it just gets interpreted so differently, not necessarily negatively, but it's just sort of, you're just sort of othered, I guess. And you're sort of left in this bubble of feeling strange, feeling so strange. When you're so constantly perceived as outside of something, you start to internalize that, and you start to wonder if like you are literally the problem, you know? Maybe you've constructed an identity that only works under certain circumstances, certain conditions. But Becker's point was that deviance isn't about who you are. It's more so about this relationship between you and the environment. Like it's situational, it's relational, it's not you. And I'm constantly having to convince myself of that. I think this is like such a side plot, but it's always part of why I've felt such a pull to Edward Scissorhands. Like, this is one of my favorite films of all time. I think it's absolutely genius. And I recently watched it now as an adult. I hadn't seen it since I was a teenager. And it was actually one of Regis's favorite films as well. It's just the tragedy of the story, like, is not that Edward is inherently broken or incapable of doing things that other people could do, or incapable of the sense of belonging, or incapable of feeling love and empathy and all of the wonderful things that make life worth living, right? It's that he's like placed into this world that does not have the capacity to understand who he is beyond a certain point, right? The neighborhood in that film, it's uniform, it's structured, it's like its normalcy is, dare I say, performative. Like it is so filtered, it is so uncomfortably normal. And that's how my hometown actually feels. If you know where I'm from and anything about this place, like it is quite literally that. At first in the film, his difference, you know, having literally scissors his hands, being this like goth diva that he is, his differences are fascinating, and it's even celebrated. People come to this realization that like, wow, you could be different and be loved. But that only lasts as long as he can be contained within their expectation of him. The moment he becomes too complex, too emotional, too difficult for them to categorize into their perfect little boxes, the perception of him entirely shifts. And that's where we see like such a change in everyone's attitude towards him. And nothing about him has actually changed. Like he's been the same the whole time. So like what really changes is your environment's tolerance for what it can't easily define, what it expects of you versus what you've delivered. And I think what's been difficult is trying to locate the source of that feeling, right? Whether it's coming from something internal, something I need to adjust, reshape within myself, or if it's simply the result of being in a place that just does not have the capacity to hold space for the range of the person I've become. Geese. Because if deviance is relational, if it's dependent on context, then it means the same person can be entirely at ease in one environment and completely out of place in another without changing at all. And that possibility is both comforting and unsettling, because it makes me realize like there's not anything actually wrong with me. It's not something I'm doing, it's not something I've done. It's just that I might be somewhere that is just simply not meant for me. Nothing is out of place, right? Which sucks, but it's making me realize that this whole shift in my life, this feeling out of place, this feeling like I'm not enough, or like I'm too much, or like I just don't belong, it was never a me problem. It was just a matter of where I ended up. Okay, thanks for listening. I hope this helped. I love you all. With love, always. I will see you in my next video, and let me know what you want me to talk about next. I'm going to go enjoy the birds and the nature, and I will see you soon. Okay. Bye, guys.